I am here with Nidafjöll from the very up-and-coming atmospheric black metal act known as Veiled. How are you doing today?
What's going on, bud? How are you?
Good, good. So, how's the day going for you so far?
Not too bad.
Not bad.
Having a pretty good day, I would say.
Not bad. So for those who are unfamiliar with who Veiled is, did you want to, or even yourself, is there anything you want to say before we get started? Start talking?
Yeah, I'm just a guy who writes black metal.
Not a woman or some other dimensional creature that we don't know of right now?
I mean, it could be. Maybe.
You know what? We can find out.
Let's find out.
Yes. All right. So, real quick, thought I'd give this as a nice subject of discussion. Where did you start with making music in general? What inspired you?
Like for Veiled or just...
In general. In general.
Well, I remember the first time I picked up guitar, I was 13. I was really heavily into punk rock at the time. Like Misfits, Dead Kennedys, Rancid, stuff like that. That's what inspired me to play music. But me being so young, I didn't take it seriously. It was just like, oh, I got a guitar. Let's play some music.
It's just like, all right, let's just make some noise and see what kind of happens.
More or less.
Okay.
I didn't really get serious about writing music till I was about 16, 17. So it took me a while.
What was it that really got you to make music?
When I first heard black metal.
And what was your first black metal act that you listened to that sealed the deal for you?
I mean, I remember the first quote-unquote black metal song I heard, which was Progenies from Demu. Now, the first...
Interesting, okay.
This was a long time ago.
Well, I mean,
a long time ago.
Hey, it's fair. Back in a time when Demu were actually raking some good-ass black metal.
It was, a long time ago.
Yeah, a little bit. But anyways, I apologize.
But, I remember going into FYE one day with my brother, and I picked up Night Side of the Eclipse. Now, at the time, I didn't know I had no idea. I just saw the cover, and the cover looked cool.
That's what happens to me a lot of times.
Now, if you remember back in the day, FYE used to have the little scanner where you can listen to like the 30-second clips.
Which never worked. It maybe worked 25% of the time.
I mean, if you had like 10 CDs, you were able to listen to like 2.
Yeah,
so,
yes.
Of course, I took Night Side Eclipse and I scanned it, and it didn't work. Went to another scanner, didn't work. So I was like, well, the cover's cool, I gotta buy it. Let's see what it sounds like. And I took it home and I put it on immediately, and it took me a few listens to kind of like really grasp what I was hearing, because that was like I said, that was really the first time I heard black metal, like real black metal.
Right.
So I think that kind of is what really set me on my path, was listening to Nightside for the first handful of times, because the sound was just something I've never heard before. Now, granted, like I just said, Progenies was the first quote-unquote black metal song I heard. Compare that to, Into the Infinity of Thoughts, the first song you hear on Nightside.
Dude, it's like night and day.
It's night and day.
One's very like over the top, very almost Tim Burton-y, I guess you could say, to an extent.
That's a pretty accurate way to describe Demon.
Whereas Emperor is just this experience. You go into it, especially if you don't know what you're getting into, it's just like this. You're just taken aback, like, holy crap. And the artwork just complements the experience. It's like this very haunting, disturbing, but also very majestic feel, which most black metal didn't really do, since they felt like they were like, oh, Satan all the time, whereas they...
And again, it's like, you think at the time, like 2000, I think the Progeny song, it was on MTV, like what, it was 2004, 5, 6, something like that. 2003.
2003?
Is when the record came out, yes. So I think about 2004 is when I saw that video.
For Progenies, just double checking?
Progenies, yes. So around that time...
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think it was around 03, 04, I think.
Or 03,
something, anyways.
Something like that. Around that time is when I first saw that video. So in that time frame is when I went to the FYE and I saw that album cover. Now you got to think, 2003, what was coming out at the time around that?
Well, I mean, metalcore was a really big thing at that time.
Metalcore was the thing at that time.
Yeah.
So the cover of Nightside Eclipse, that was completely different from Kill Switch Engage, As I Lay Dying, so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, like, just and that, I think that speaks volumes to the imagery of black metal. If you don't know what you're getting into and you just base it completely on the artwork, I think that's a great gateway for people to get into black metal just based on the imagery alone.
Well, the thing with Emperor that's really different compared to like Darkthrone or even Bathory to an extent is that with Emperor, it's very, very... The artwork captures this almost majestic feel that most of the other bands, it's kind of a simple cover. Like Mayhem's Death Mysteries, Dom Santanas is just this cathedral that's on there, which is perfect.
But in that same token, you could say that album cover... that album cover is in the same sense. It has that majestic, atmospheric, dreary mood that Nightside did. Yeah, now I don't think about it. I guess you could say that black metal in general just has this very precise and specific way of how the imagery is, which is what drew me into it to begin with, like I was saying. But of course, once I heard the record, it was just game over.
Well, I mean, that's generally what happens is with a lot of these albums that are so fantastic, such as Death Mysteries, In the Night Eclipse. I mean, hell, even name always escapes me. The first Over record, that even just like it seals the deal.
Arctad.
Yes.
Great record.
I always botch the name every time I try and do it, so I just don't even bother. But it is superb black metal. But all those just capture exactly what you're getting into. Mm-hmm. And then all the bands of the future just kind of follow suit with that idea.
More or less. I mean, they were the originators. Well, one of the originators.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter how many years go by or how many more bands come out, you just can't beat the originals. You just can't. I'm sorry. You can't beat the originals.
Now, I mean, you have other regions such as Sweden, which are just going and doing what, granted, it was different. It's a different sound than Norway's.
But even then, look at what was happening in Sweden in the early 90s. Dark Funeral, Dissection, Necrophobic, I mean, Offermod. I mean, I can go on and on. There was a great scene coming out in the mid-90s in Sweden.
And it's still going right now.
I mean, they pretty much have seized the capital of black metal.
I mean, they seized the capital for all metal of all kinds.
To a degree, I guess you could say.
At least as far as, like, for most would say, in comparison to, at least with black metal, but death metal still reigns supreme over there, too. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So anyways, another thing I have for you is, obviously, Veiled was originally Gnosis of the Witch.
Yes.
And Gnosis of the Witch had a very distinct sound opposed to Veiled. Mm-hmm. What was the origin of that switch, could you say?
Like, what brought the switch?
That, and then, was it natural? Was it something that you felt that...
It was a conscious decision.
Okay.
Because Gnosis of the Witch had an agenda. It was more, the music was more or less a vessel for the content, the lyricism, the theme, the whatever you want to call it. Gnosis of the Witch was me creating an avenue to express a spiritual idea that I had at the time. But in saying that, that also represented a very dark period of my life. And I had to, once I kind of like got out of that, that had to end. So where was the music going to go? Was I going to continue this band that represented something I wanted to leave behind, or do I start something new? Which is how Veiled happened. As far as the sound, I hear a lot of people say that Gnosis and Veiled have, like, again, night and day sounds. To me, not necessarily, because Gnosis was still very atmospheric.
It is, I agree.
I mean, it was more riff based and more riff driven.
It's a different type of riff, though.
It is. Whereas Veiled is more, well, I mean, okay, I guess I could see now that I'm thinking about it what people mean is like Veiled is more based on the overall atmosphere, as opposed to this is a great riff. Where is this next riff going to take it to create the atmosphere, as opposed to the atmosphere itself? So I can say now that I think about it, I guess people are right.
The people sometimes have some clue what they're talking about.
I suppose so.
Sometimes they don't, though. I mean, I can get into that, a whole separate discussion. But either way, another thing I'm actually curious about, with the name Nidafjo, Where does that come from? I always wondered that.
That is from the Old Norse mythology. Nidafjöll is it means dark mountains.
Okay.
In Voluspa is a old famous poem. It talks about Ragnarok. And at the end of Ragnarok, when life is reborn, and the two, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, two men, or two humans and two gods survive Ragnarok.
Yes.
The earth is reborn. Balder comes out from under the underworld, and he takes his throne in Asgard.
Right.
Now, Nidafjöll has I think, a very specific and significant importance in pretty much the whole lore of Norse mythology, because if you look at it in a philosophical sense, I guess you could say, or maybe foreshadowing. Let's say foreshadowing.
Okay.
Nidafjöll stands for, even though the world is rebuilt and the world is renewed and that cycle of life continues, Nidafjöll stands as a symbol that order and chaos are coexist in each other. At the end of Ragnarok, the dragon, Nidhogger, flies over Nidafjöll off into the distance.
Yeah.
So it basically gives you like this foreshadowing that, okay, life has come back, life is renewed after it was destroyed, but still something lurks. And to me, I think that really represents life. You're going to have your good, you're going to have your bad, you're going to have your ups, you're going to have your downs. Life is a cycle, a continuing cycle that no matter how high you get, you can always go down low. And that's why I picked the name Nidafjöll as an alias, not only musically but spiritually, because of what, to me, it represents.
Which is much more powerful than most people who are kind of just picking these names just because to sound scary and edgy. Yours has more of an importance personally.
Yeah, like I said, it has an importance to me spiritually because of how I interpreted that significant passage in Voluspa of, okay, why at the very end of this poem is this mountain range mentioned? Why? So when I dug deep into what it means, where it's located at in the cosmology of Norse mythology, where this dragon came from and why this specific mountain range happens to be where it's at as opposed to where it could have been, it kind of resonated within me, and I felt that was a good name for me to choose to carry along, and that is from the Gnosis of the Witch days. And I even considered changing it when Veiled came around, but because that name has such significance to me, I kept it.
Which is appropriate, and also counts as almost an evolution for yourself and the project itself.
When you look at it more or less, it's like, again, the cycle. The cycle continues.
Exactly. That makes perfect sense. It works out nicely. Now, also, since you obviously know a lot about the Norse mythology itself, have you thought about writing material based on that, especially with the Veiled name? Kind of given a nice mold.
Well, that's what Gnosis of the Witch was. Gnosis of the Witch was specifically based on the darker aspects of Norse mythology.
That explains a lot, actually, based on like the runes and the symbols on the artwork, things like that. Explains a lot.
Now, when Gnosis of the Witch ended, like I said, that was a period of time that needed to be left behind because of what it represented. Norse mythology is still something I practice spiritually. Yeah. It's still something I study. It's still something I read.
Right.
But not in the sense of what it was at the time. Again, the continuing cycle of what was and what is.
The other interesting thing I really like with the change from Gnosis to Veiled is going from, as you said, the Norse sound, which I can't believe I actually didn't notice that, but either way, that switch to going a more cosmic route is a very interesting take, also very spiritual. You're a Lovecraft fan.
I am, but Lovecraft doesn't... It's not in my music, not whatsoever. I mean, it's something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But I don't personally connect with it or resonate. It doesn't resonate with me in a sense that I would write music about it. But, I mean, anybody who's a horror fan should have some kind of interest or respect for Lovecraft. I mean, the guy was a master.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. Now, granted, there's some... anyways. Yeah. Either way, it was just something I thought I'd ask because thought it'd be a nice, interesting take for you, but obviously you don't want to write anything that doesn't come from the heart because that makes no sense at all whatsoever.
I mean, You can look at it in the sense that I could pick out a story from Lovecraft, and I may or may not, or let's say I do. Let's say there's a story in Lovecraft that he wrote that I connect with. I could write a song about it. I could write a record about it. But that's not something that is relevant in my life. You know what I mean? So, sorry, people, but you're not going to have a Lovecraft themed record from Veil. It's just
damn it! It's just my dreams are shattered now. Shit.
As a matter of fact, I do. The main side project that I have is called Whispers of the Black Wolf, with my family member Angela. It's a dark ambient project that we've been working on for 8 years now.
8 years.
8 years. It's not something that we overly promote or try to push. It's just something we do for the love of it. It's it's a mood. It's a current that we create for this kind of music. Yeah, like I said, we've been doing it for a really long time now, and it's just something that we really are really passionate about. I think it really shines in the music that we have available for people to listen to. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain really in, layman's terms, but just give it a listen, let the journey take you away. It's especially, it's very somber, meditative, trance-like. We actually have something new coming out at the end of the year that we're going to be working on pretty here soon. And I also have a death metal project that I'm working on with a friend of mine called Swarming. And can't really say too much about that at the moment, but something will surface pretty soon here.
Sure, it'll be pretty tasty. We need some nice, really good death metal. Anyways, also something I thought was really cool is you went to Sweden to record the first Veiled album.
I did.
First, how nice were the people over there?
Everyone in Sweden's really cool. At least the people that I talk to.
Are they Canadian levels of nice?
Well, no.
Damn it.
I noticed that the people in Sweden are very reserved.
I heard that as well.
Now, once you get them opened up and start talking to them, by the end of the day, they're your best buds.
It sounds about right.
You know what I mean? But on first meeting, they're very drawn back. I think that now this is just something I heard. I think it may have to do with Swedish people don't want to come across ignorant or stupid to the English language. They don't want to seem like they can't They don't want it to seem like they can't speak proper English. Now, that's just something I heard. I don't know if it's entirely true or not.
I mean, I could buy that if that were the case, but it would make sense.
More or less, Swedish people are very proud people. They don't want to come across as stupid, more or less.
I mean, even the bands themselves, a lot of the bands from Sweden are very, what's the word I want to use? Yeah, we could just go with proud. They're very proud. They'll have the banners available to them, so it makes sense. That explains a lot.
Yeah. But I tell you what, man, that was a really cool experience. The Gra guys were really cool to me. Iron Bonehead for setting the whole thing up and flying me out, spending a week there, staring at the same four walls for 10 hours a day. But I tell you what, I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Was it have you gone? Well, I mean, you made other music. Obviously, you've been in the studio before. But was this your first time out of the country recording an album?
This was my first time in Europe. Period.
Really? You've never been to Europe before?
No, that was my first time in Europe.
Wow.
And I just happened to go record a record my first time in there, and it was a lot of fun, man.
Hey, it's not a bad time. It's not a bad time.
Not at all.
How long were you over there recording the album?
A week.
Oh, that's not too bad.
No.
That's actually really quick now I'm thinking about it.
I wish we could have had more time for sure, but I tell you, man, me, Helge Mother, and Demon worked our asses off.
I believe that. Definitely believe that.
We worked our asses off to get that record the absolute best that we possibly could with the amount of time we had.
I mean, considering you had 7 days to get it done, I mean, you kind of had to go on overdrive.
I mean, you got to think, I arrived in Sweden at 10 in the morning. They came and picked me up, and we went straight to the studio.
VIP service right there.
I mean, we went straight to the studio and started recording. That was there was no, let's get unpacked, let's go.
They're like, fuck this, we're starting right now.
We're going right now. We're going to go straight to the studio. And we spent literally 10-hour days every day in the studio until our eyes were red. We we didn't leave that place unless we had to go eat. Like, that was it. That's the only time we left the studio was to go eat. And then we went right back and stayed till... It's funny because we woke up 8 o'clock in the morning and we're out of the studio at like midnight, 1 o'clock. I mean, we stayed all day recording that record. And it was a blast. It was an absolute blast.
I gotta ask you this. You mentioned the only time you left your bunker of solitude was to get food. How was the Swedish food?
Really good.
Good.
One cool thing that I noticed is that obviously we live in a multicultural world now. You're not going to go to Sweden. There's only going to be Swedish people. That's just...
Oh, no. I mean, people travel all the time.
Especially in Stockholm. Stockholm's a big city. There's going to be people from all over.
Yes. And it's been that way for years.
There was a lot of different foods. We had Thai food. We had, Japanese food. I mean, there was all kinds of different food. Now, by the time that I actually got to eat traditional Swedish food, it was absolutely amazing. One of the best dishes I've ever had. It was really, really good.
What did you have?
I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was, but it was like fish and potatoes, bread, and lingonberries, like covered or smothered in like melted butter, and it was just holy shit. It was so good.
That is fantastic. I'm always about some good international cuisine. That's the first thing I do anywhere I go is find some local food and just go crazy.
Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of good food trucks just around the city.
Oh, that's even worse.
Hey, man, I like me a good food truck.
Oh, you don't have to tell me twice. Other than, obviously, your enormous black metal influence, considering the project Veiled and Gnosis, did you get any influence from any other genres of music as well?
Yes. My main influences for songwriting is, Bathory, Burzum, Dark Throne, and Catatonia.
No way, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, but Catatonia is the one that I think is most surprising.
It is, but it's not, because those more moody moments, especially on Veiled's work, where it slows down, gets really somber. Yeah. It makes sense, especially the older Catatonia, even some newer Catatonia.
Catatonia has been my favorite band since I was like 11 years old. I mean, I followed everything they've ever put out, since I discovered them. And obviously something you listen to on a constant basis is going to seep into your subconscious whether you want it to or not. And while I may not have sat down and go, I'm going to write a Catatonia part, it happens. You know what I mean?
I mean, if whatever's flowing through you, it kind of just happens.
Like, there's a song on the Black Celestial Orbs record that, without me realizing I did it, I quote unquote borrowed a Catatonia riff, but if you didn't know it, you would never hear it, and I didn't realize it to me until actually not too long ago. I was like, wow, that sounds like so and so. How about that?
I mean, you don't really think about that when you're making the music. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, your influences are going... Now, I see a clear separation between inspiration and influence. Influence is... This record sounds like XXX.
Right.
Whereas inspiration is... You're writing a riff and you get that mood or that vibe or that sound that you're trying to create, as opposed to, this is what I want it to sound like, this is who I like listening to, this is where it's going to go. Which I think is limiting. It puts you in a box that's like, okay, well, if this is what you're going to sound like, well, you can't really experiment very much.
I mean, music is art. I mean, you have to kind of just do what you do. It can kind of just go where the direction you want it to go. I mean, look at Over.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're a perfect example, which is a shame. Over, make more black metal music. But,
hey, that's what Mirker's for. But anyways, continue.
But yeah, man, I just think that inspiration and influence is something that needs to be drawn down the line. You can have your inspiration, you can have your influence, but once you allow them to dictate the music that you're writing, I think that's where genuine songwriting ends. But that's just my opinion.
Hey, it's fair. But is there any other, any classical influences or anything like that you've added into your music? Maybe, I don't know, jazz, hip-hop, anything like that?
Not really. I mean, I do listen to jazz and hip-hop and so on and so forth, but it's funny because I'm gonna paraphrase something that Fenris said at one point.
Okay.
You can listen to it, but this is what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, this is what Veiled is. This is the music I'm going to write, and I don't need inside or outside influence to like manipulate or influence that. I can listen to other things, but when it comes to Veiled, this is the sound I want it to have. That's it. I don't need anything else to come in. I'm not gonna create a hip-hop, trancey, dance, black metal song because I listen to this. It's like, it's just not gonna happen.
Well, then you'd just be like another horrorcore rapper, and God knows we don't need any of those.
No, we don't.
I mean, ICP exists, and that itself is a travesty to mankind.
Yes, it is.
Now, lastly, I wanted to discuss Pittsburgh with you, and how it's been treating you so far, and things like that. So, just as have you been in Pittsburgh all your life, or are you new?
No, I moved to Pennsylvania about 7 years ago.
Okay.
From Florida. That's where I was born and raised. I didn't actually start venturing out into Pittsburgh until early this year, is when I decided to put a lineup together with Veiled to start playing shows and whatnot. But all the people I've been interacted with and spoken to have been pretty cool to me. I don't have any complaints really.
That's very good. What do you think that, just from as an outsider, obviously, are there any like pros and cons that you think of off the top of your head to the scene around here?
I hate to start with the cons, but I have a few cons that I've noticed.
Go for it. It's to help the scene get better, so I'd like to hear it.
Pay to play is an abomination and needs to end. I don't understand why that's still a thing. All that is just to line the promoters' pockets. It doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit the bands. It doesn't benefit the fans. It doesn't benefit anybody. That needs to end. Back in Florida, we made a conscious effort to kill that because, okay, you're getting a band to pay you $150 for 20 tickets. All right, now you have $150 in your pocket. Now this band has to go scrap out in the street to sell tickets. That's not their job. Their job is to show up and play the music, not put money in your pocket. Now, granted, a promoter has to pay the band, rent the venue, quote unquote, make their due. I understand that.
Right.
But pay to play is plain and simple, it's bullshit.
I mean, the good thing is, thankfully, it seems to have started toning down a little bit more recently, but that was a very big problem and has been for a long time.
And I want to give a major shout out to Winterforge because they're doing it right. They are a serious silver lining in this city for bringing underground music to the people and promoting it and doing it right. That's how music needs to be done. If you want an example of how to go about bringing local bands and national bands and other outside of state bands to your city, look at them. They should be the staple for Pittsburgh.
I mean,
100%.
Considering that they've gotten articles written about them in Decibel, that gives you an idea of the credibility they have. Not to mention that the first time I met Chris, who runs Winterforge, I was back in 2016, and I remember it was Abigail Williams was in town, and they've been in Pittsburgh. They've come to Pittsburgh all the time, and they've always kind of had a problem with a lot of the promoters. And I remember they were talking, and he was talking about how like Chris was in Winterforge was by far the best promoters that they've ever dealt with in Pittsburgh.
He's a good guy.
And are a godsend. Oh, he is.
He's a good dude, and he really knows what he's doing, and he really knows where he wants to take this promotion, company or whatever you want to call it. Where he wants to take this and what he's trying to build for the local music scene, and I really praise him for that. The other as well.
Everyone that's involved is great.
They're doing a great job, and I tip my hat to them 100%.
And it's because I think it's just because they're just passionate about the music, which is something this town needs.
Exactly. It's not something to line your pocket with. If you're going to do it, you need to really want to do it, and they do. They want to bring music to Pittsburgh, and
they've done pretty well so far.
I honor them for that. Absolutely. Another con that I've noticed is and I'm going to sound really arrogant saying this,
hey, go for it. It's an open forum, essentially.
The lack of passion for local music. And what I mean by that is that we've already played a handful of shows in Pittsburgh. Now, granted, there's been some pretty good shows that we played, but there's also been some shows that it's like the turnout's not all that great. I don't know if this is a long-standing thing in Pittsburgh that it takes a band to bring people out. I don't know if that's the case, which is, I mean, you could say that for any city, but
Yeah.
the music scene is not going to grow unless everybody makes it happen. The same 100 people is not going to grow a music scene.
Which is true.
You know what I mean? If you're a metal fan and there's a metal show on a Friday night at 8 o'clock and it's only $10, go. Doesn't matter if you know who the bands are not. Go. Support the scene. Make the scene grow. That's going to bring more bands in. It's going to bring more music to the city. And it could, who knows, the next big thing could come out of that because more people are coming to the shows. Now, skipping from the cons, there are some pros. There's some great pros.
Okay.
One, I noticed that Pittsburgh is very, very embracing of extreme music.
Yes.
Like, doom is a huge thing. I've heard that death metal was like had a grip on this city for a long time.
Still kind of does.
Like grind was a thing for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing now that since we've started playing out, that there's starting to be like a yearning for black metal.
There always was for a long time. And from talking to people as well, they've all said the same thing. There was never anything like truly to get going, and there have been bands here and there. But weirdly enough, I think Veiled's the first one where people have completely unified, are like, yes, this is the band from Pittsburgh.
Wow, that's very humbling. I'm honored to hear that.
Like from talking to people who've played, like in my friends in Dreadeth, or were in Dreadeth, they speak very highly of Veiled. Actually, when we were at, we went to see Slayer for their farewell tour. Either way, we went to see them. We were hanging out. My friend Jeremy went to hang out with Nurgle and all them for the VIP, and he wore his Veiled shirt, and he got a bunch of compliments.
Wow.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised.
That's awesome.
I was going to wear mine, but then we would have been tools wearing the same band shirt, and we would have looked like a bunch of assholes.
But, I mean, I think the one thing that I really like, I love Pittsburgh.
It's a beautiful town.
I really like this place. The more time I'm spending in Pittsburgh, the more I'm really starting to like it. It's got this, like, you know, homegrown, blue-collar feel to it, you know what I mean? It's like everyone is chipping in to make shit happen. But I think the major pro about Pittsburgh that I really like is that people, even, I'm going to kind of contradict what I said about not everyone not coming out to make the scene happen, but the people who do come out to these shows, they're there to truly enjoy it. They want to see this grow. They want to see it happen. They want to see it prosper. And I think that's a great building point for the Pittsburgh local scene. Now, like I said, I'm an outsider. I've only been here for so long, and I've only been in the scene for a year. So what I've seen just in this year has been really promising to me, because obviously this is now my home base, and I want to deliver the best I can to the city.
Which it's a work in progress, but I think with Winterforge and the slew of bands that we have, including you guys, a few others like Grey Walker's blowing up right now. You have Postmortal Possession. You have a bunch of other bands. Slaves BC is really blowing up right now with their new album that just came out.
Slaves BC is really fucking good.
That album came out of nowhere and just was astonishing. But with bands like that, of course, Veiled, especially with the following apparently you guys have in Sweden, from what I heard.
Hey man, when you have the guys in Dark Funeral, you know, working on your record, I think that kind of puts the word out a little bit.
It's not nobody cares about them. You know, it's only Dark Funeral.
But you know, huge shout out to Andreas and Demon. They're some of the coolest dudes I've ever spoken to. I had, you know, the pleasure to hang out with them for a week and work with them in the studio, and they really pushed me to make the best record I possibly could, and without them, I honestly don't know if it would have been what it is now.
Hey, it turned out really well, and a lot of people are liking it.
Thank you.
I mean, considering it's also on $20 Spin, you can order it on Hell's Headbangers, which kind of caught me by surprise.
Huh.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine up in Cleveland about it, and I'm like, he just picked it up from there. I'm like, shit, okay.
I mean, Iron Bonehead has a pretty wide distribution, and you know, Hell's Headbangers, Nuclear War Now, so on and so forth. Canada gets a good bit of it. Of course, over in Europe, he sends it out to other records, but he is the main European spot for his records, of course, because he's in Germany, and Germany is kind of the central point for a lot of extreme music out there. Label-wise.
Yeah.
Label-wise. A lot of really good, really big labels in Europe that are pushing out a lot of great shit are in Germany, now that I really think about it. But yeah, he's got a lot of good connections in the States, and as like you just said, I had no idea that our record was on $20 Spin. That's awesome. That's really cool.
But anyways, I greatly appreciate you sitting down and talking with me. And
Thank you.
did you want to give a shout out to all the probably 10, 20 people that are listening right now?
I mean, to everybody who just gives our music a listen, thank you. It means a lot. Like I said, I'm just some guy who makes music and trying to make a dream happen, and so far it's doing pretty good, and it doesn't happen if nobody listens, so much appreciated.
Hey, it's very true. Well, for all of you that don't know, Veiled's album just came out in March, just this past 3 months ago now. You can pick it up bandcamp. You can go to one of the shows whenever that is. What's the next show, actually, while I'm thinking about it?
The next book show is in October in Maryland. We may sprinkle some here and there before then, but that's all we have at the moment.
And that's with Uwada and a few other bands, isn't it?
It's the Satan's Unholy Abomination Festival. Uwada will be there, Inferno from the Czech Republic, Panzerfaust from Canada, Imperial Triumphant from New York, who I'm really looking forward to.
Oh, Imperial Triumphant's going to be
Really
crazy.
Balmog from Spain, I am really looking forward to seeing them.
Sounds like a really tasty lineup. I'm excited for
there's
that.
A lot of cool bands playing. I can't wait to see it. Rock on.
But anyways, yeah, pick up merch from Bandcamp, go to the show, support them, give them a hug, all that good stuff. And we will talk to you next time.